Obviously the law, the compensation law, is grinding us into the point where even that occurs.
Yes.
That's what the law is trying to do.
Because we're in sin while we are denying our emotional experience.
Of course we are.
Yeah.
Yes, because God created us to experience emotions and not shut them down.
Yeah.
So that is a sin, to shut down your emotions. It is a sin.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't realise it, but they are sinning not only towards themselves, but they're sinning towards God in the very way they are made.
Yeah.
When they shut down themselves emotionally. So that's a sin. It's going to have compensatory penalties. One of the penalties is you become detuned, you can't become in denial, you take actions unaware. That's one of the penalties of that sin. Mm-hmm. And the law of compensation is trying to open you back up to your emotions. Most of the events that occur in your life are trying to open you back up to emotion. And once you're open to emotion, you have the ability to ask God and feel God's emotions about any subject. And once you can feel God's emotions about any subject, then obviously you'll progress much more rapidly than if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So a very important question is prayer worthwhile here? Yes, of course. Prayer is the opening of your heart to God, and God then has the ability to truly tell you, and that's going to surely make the awakening much easier. If you've got someone who knows the exact truth, telling you the exact truth, that's a lot easier than someone knows the partial truth or no truth at all trying to tell you something.
Yeah. It feels to me though that when a person has this truly heartfelt desire to understand their sin and its causes or how they have sinned specifically, the law of compensation within the soul, just the pain from that is going to be very instructive on its own, isn't it? Even without God's answer.
Of course, but why would you engage a law when you can engage the creator of the law?
Sure.
That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it feels to me that the better course of action is to engage the creator of the law, and then you'll find out everything about the law itself.
Yeah.
So while we definitely want to teach people law, about the law, because it's a very, very important part of understanding their relationship with God, at the end of the day, I'd much prefer to help a person have a direct connection with God and understand the law that way than develop an understanding of the law through the law's operation itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, the law of compensation is operating because we're resistive to knowing from God or from anyone else probably. Mm-hmm. That's why the majority of people, when we tell them, they ask how they're going, and we tell them a sin that they are currently committing, they get angry and bitter and twisted with us, and they never want to see us again. Well, that's how they're treating God too. They never want to see God again either. If God could share with them what they've done wrong, they wouldn't want to borrow of God either. Mm-hmm. That's why they don't have a relationship with God. Mm. So I feel it's much better to engage the process of wanting to know. Mm-hmm. You can, if you want to know, then God will share with you if you truly want to know.
Yeah.
The difference between God and a person, though, is God will only respond when it's a sincere, heartfelt desire, whereas a person may share with you what you say you want to know, but don't really want to know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, the final question is kind of answered anyway, but it was, is the only truly productive prayer to God for forgiveness and repentance? So
the answer to that's no, obviously.
Yeah.
It's productive to pray to God for all purposes and on all occasions, and particularly in the process of the awakening, because the awakening has to occur before God's love can flow, and this is an important thing that we need to understand.
But the transmission of truth from God comes with love, does it not?
It comes with the awakening towards God. Like, we have to first have an awakening towards God before we will allow God to tell us things. Right?
But is the way that God tells us things through love?
Well, once we have an awakening to God, we're automatically engaging in more loving a relationship with God. So it's automatic now. So I feel there's, even in yourself, there's still some confusion about, like, the reality is, if I desire a relationship with God, truly desire it, then I'm already in a condition of being open to love.
That's right.
But I have to get to that point through a decision that I make. God's not going to force it upon me. I need to get to the point where I'm open and willing to hear from God about every subject.
Yes,
right?
and yes,
and that openness and willingness, for sure, the law is probably going to grind away there until we desire, I could do this a lot easier. I could just talk to God about this, and if I'm really, really open and I really want it, God's going to show me. Yeah. God will show me, and then I don't have to go through this terrible process of trying to work it out for myself all the time, right? So yes, I feel that this is a part of the developing a relationship with God. If you're blocked towards God, then you block off that opportunity completely. And when you block off that opportunity, now you've only got the tools that God gives you. Yeah. Because you blocked off the opportunity for the direct communication with God.
You're limited to lower laws, you're limited to helpers, self-reliance,
spirits who are trying to help
maybe
you.
Maybe some guides, loving people around you, but you're really
and you're limited
yourself,
about your own awareness because you're not even really wanting to know, because if you don't want to know with God, then it's highly likely that you also don't want to know from other people. Highly likely. Yeah. So the best thing I can suggest to a person if they want to truly become aware of their sin and to have an awakening to sin is to first have an awakening with God. That makes sense, right? Have the awakening with God. Do whatever you can to make the awakening with God occur. Your awakening, God's already awake to you. Allow the awakening from you to God to occur. Yeah. And that's the beginning of your relationship with God. God now can tell you anything. The guy who I talked to through you last week, he had two only conversations with God in that conversation that we had with him. The first conversation was, did God exist? And he received some acknowledgement that God surely did exist. The second conversation he had with God was this issue of how did he harm his wife? And God told him how he harmed his wife. He didn't want to hear any more after that. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
But one way you can experiment with it initially is just have a pure feeling that you want to know the truth whether God exists or not. And the way to confirm it is to ask God that if he does exist, can he give you a feeling that he exists?
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I like it.
Well, because it makes you cry.
Yeah.
And you don't like crying much, right? And that's part of the problem, is that you're going to have to let yourself feel some emotions if you do it this way. You follow?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what did you get? Did you notice where it came from?
Somewhere away from me.
Yep.
Suddenly, I just felt sure.
For sure?
God's real.
God's real, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, gee whiz, that wasn't so bad.
No. But it meant that you had to, you almost wanted to cry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you should have let yourself cry, probably. Right? Because then you would have received more of that feeling. You see, it's allowance of the emotion that will allow the feeling to continue. And you shut down the emotion, which shuts down the feeling. Do you follow? You remember when you had that feeling of love for your son, you started crying, really? You teared up, started feeling sad and emotional? That's okay. That's how God created you to be emotional. And while you have that feeling, the colour comes out of you. Right?
Yeah.
While you have a feeling that you want to know the truth from God, well, God will want to share the truth with you.
It's not like I thought.
No, it's not like I thought. It involves thoughts.
No, it's not like I thought it was going to be.
No, it's not like you thought either, is it? Well, you didn't even have a thought about it, did you? Of any kind?
God?
No.
No, I just thought churchy stuff.
Yeah. But it's not like that at all. God's a real being. But God's not interested in church, which makes sense.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. There's been a lot of things done in the name of religion over there.
Kneeling, standing, singing.
And wars and whatever else that have been all caused in the name of religion I'm sure God's, you feel, is God impressed by religion on earth?
I don't know.
Well, ask for God to give you confirmation about how God feels. This is how you find out. Ask God for the truth about how he feels about earth-based religions.
Oh, wow. They got it all wrong.
Yeah. Why? Why have they got it all wrong? What was the feeling that came with that you had?
Well, none of it's right.
That's
and
right.
It's all hurting.
It's all hurting people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in fact, this is one of the reasons why many people who are religious have passed into the hells just like your dad has, because it's hurt people. A lot of what religions believe is not true.
I don't know. I think I've got to go now. It's so much now.
Yeah.
I'm just completely overwhelmed.
Well, this is the other thing I'd like to say to you. Allow yourself, the more you allow yourself to be overwhelmed by emotion, the faster the process will occur between where you are and where Bob is. The more you shut down your feelings of emotion, the slower the process will occur.
Okay.
Now, the thing that you've learned is that you can ask God anything.
Yeah.
And get answers, as long as you're open to receiving those answers emotionally. Right? And you've also learnt that if you allow yourself to be emotionally overwhelmed, that you'll progress faster than if you haven't allowed yourself to be emotionally overwhelmed. Now, as a result of receiving a little bit of God's love just now, if you look at your environment,
Yeah, it's a bit better.
it's a bit better, just a little bit. Right?
Well, actually, it's heaps better.
Yeah.
It's heaps better. I didn't see Bob was there and that made it better, but
Yeah.
he just went away while I did that. And
Yeah.
it's better, it's heaps better.
Yeah. And also,
So this is all I've got to do.
that's all you've got to do. That's all you've got to do, but it has to be sincere. It has to come from your heart. It can't be something you just manufacture in your head, and you have to have some kind of awakening as to the sin. You have to have some kind of personal desire to move yourself through these places by desiring God's love and also letting yourself cry, which is a part of the repentance process. Does that make sense?
So I should go back over my whole life,
Yeah.
ask God what
What the truth is. Yeah.
Okay.
Is how you treated your wife what God would have liked? You ask God that.
Oh, I can't handle it.
No.
Oh,
Okay.
no.
So just
no.
okay.
No.
See, now this is where you're shutting down emotion. So this is what you've got to learn to not do, right? But I did that just to give you an example, right? Now, there's one other thing I need to show you, right? What can help you is that there is already a list of all the things that are unloving that you've done in your life in front of you.
A list?
Yeah. It's just that the conversation he had with God was this issue of how did he harm his wife? And God told him how he harmed his wife. He didn't want to hear any more after that. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah.
But he was a man who was shortly before in the hells. So he totally capable because he opened his heart to the possibility of receiving a communication from God, and he desired it from his heart, as I described to him.
Yep.
And so he received it. Mm-hmm. That will be the case with everyone. Mm-hmm. It's only because we're not doing that we're not receiving the communication. So, yeah, so that's the secret. So our blockages with God are the most important blockages we can work through from now, before we do anything else. That's the blockages we need to work through. That's where I see the majority of people limiting themselves severely, aren't they?
Yep.
And you know that you're doing that yourself, don't you, babe? So,
yep.
We had a chat with Corny this morning as well, Cornelius, and he knows he's doing that too. And most people are blocking this relationship with God, not understanding that the relationship with God will greatly simplify their ability to practice God's truth. And that's an important thing to remember.
Yeah, and obviously the blocks are, quite personal and individual for each person.
They are.
Mine are going to be very different to other people's.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. But it is so important to prioritise working through different blocks, because the blockages with God, once you've unblocked them, will have the largest benefit on your life from that moment on than any other blockage you have. So it makes sense, and I recommend to all people that they first work on their blockages with God. Because if they don't work on the blockages with God first, then unfortunately you can't receive the help from God that God could give. And that help's instantaneous, and it's always accurate. It's always truthful. It's always the truth.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. Whereas if you receive information from anyone else on the planet or in the spirit world, there may be a limited amount of knowledge that can be shared.
And also, when we're blocked to God, we're also blocked to people who are closer to God.
Of course.
And so our only sources, we're shutting out all of our reliable sources of truth in that regard.
Yes.
Because if we're blocked to God, God's the most reliable source of truth.
Yes.
Then if we're blocked to people who are closer to God, just by nature of the fact,
because they are close to God,
whatever the block with God is, will be the block with that same person.
Correct.
So if it's a block to love, then the person closer to God is going to have a lot of love, and if we're blocked to love, we'll be blocked to that person,
correct,
etc. Whatever our block with God is, it will come onto the person who's closer to God. But then the person who's closer to God is the next most reliable source of truth next to God.
Yes.
And so we can't receive truth from them. Unless you're tenacious like me and I listen.
Well, even then we can't really receive it.
It doesn't enter the heart.
No, because we're not, it's the open to God. It causes our desire to open our heart. Our heart is opened by our will, not by any other thing. That's right. Nothing can be forced upon us. So you can talk to a person who hasn't opened their heart, and all they do is hear you. Yeah. They don't, when I say hear you, they basically listen. They're not listening. They just hear you through their ears, and it enters their brain sometimes, but even then it's a very difficult process, and it rarely, if ever, enters their heart, because their heart's not open. The heart has to be open in order for you to hear and to truly listen. And the beauty of opening your blockages towards God is you're now opening your heart towards God. You're opening your ability to listen. And this is a very important part of any person's development. Once you have a higher ability to listen and to hear, now you have a higher ability to know what's going on and share the truth with others as well, and understand the truth yourself. And in the point of this conversation, you have a much better ability to have an awakening to your own sin, because now God has the ability to tell you what it is.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for those additional
very good questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.